scriptures, the Indian and Western system of philosophy, and was appointed by Sri Maharaji as his senior preacher. For the last quarter of a century, Swamiji has been traveling Swamiji has been traveling far and wide, awakening hundreds of thousands of spiritual seekers around the world. In 2007, Jagadguru Sri Kripaluji Maharaj and Swamiji Hong Kong, along with a delegation of devotees, and granted us the privilege of hosting and serving them at our home. This is indeed a very special moment and honor for me to present Swamiji's introduction today. Thank you, Swamiji, for giving me this opportunity. Pranam.
Thank you, Varsha. Happy to be on your program today.
Thank you very much for accepting this. Now I would like to introduce today's our today's moderator, Dr. Tripti Jain. Dr. Tripti Jain is a transformational life coach who is also known for her work in the field of past life regression. She has worked for more than 2 decades in the field of mental health. Her popular show, Ras on Indian primetime television, has made her a household name. I welcome Swami Mukundananji and Dr. Tripti ji to today's webinar, Search of Spirituality. Swamiji, please enlighten us on this subject. Thank you.
Namaste, Dr. Tripti Jain. It is absolutely a privilege to be speaking to you today. I'm looking forward to this session and to your questions.
A very, very big thank you to you, Swamiji, for accepting our little invitation. And I'm truly blessed that you're going to answer some amazing questions that we are always concerned about, Swamiji. Swamiji, the topic of today, I thought, would be search for spirituality. Spirituality is known to be like a panacea. Everybody wants to be spiritual. It's like a SOS pill that people want. For the last many years, I've seen people want to learn Reiki, pranic healing. It seems as if it's like a quick fix. So Swamiji, I'd like to know what exactly is spirituality?
Tripti ji, the world that we live in has different dimensions to it. One is the sensory dimension that we experience through our 5 senses. Then is the mental dimension, which is beyond the 5 senses, the emotions, the feelings, the thoughts. And then there is another dimension, which is the spiritual dimension. So that spiritual dimension is in relation to ourselves as well, how we understand our personality, and its relation to our understanding of the meaning and purpose of our life. So the spiritual aspect is an integral aspect of our personality. That is why people have that quest in them. The sensory is all great, there's luxury, there's opulence, but it doesn't satisfy. The mental emotions are also wonderful, but the quest still remains. The happiness that I am searching for, the fulfillment that I am searching for, I have still not experienced it. And that is why people look for it in spirituality. So, of course, spirituality can be taken in a lighter vein as a quick fix, as a means for entertainment, but truly it is the thing that imparts meaning and purpose to our life. It helps us fulfill the real goal of our existence itself. And it helps us manifest the internal divinity that exists in all of us. That science is spirituality.
Absolutely, Swamiji. You know, there are so many people who say that go deeper, dive deeper. Swamiji, when we go deeper, what are we going to find?
Yes, Tripti ji, this term, this expression can be confusing because when we talk about going somewhere, it refers to covering a physical distance. And out here, there is no physical distance. You are going within your personality. So what it implies is understanding deeper and deeper aspects of your own self. For example, a superficial understanding is, I am the body. And then, when we go deeper, we realize that the body is changing while I am not changing. I am different from the body. So at that time, a person identifies with the thoughts and feelings. I am these thoughts and feelings. I am disturbed. I am happy. And then we go even deeper and we come in touch with our own intellect. We see, this is the intellect, this is myself. I thought I am the intellect, these are my values, but the intellect is different from me. That's right. And then we come in touch with our real self, which is the soul, the jiva, the spirit. So going deeper means understanding yourself in reality and then trying to manifest that spiritual nature. So it's one thing to know and another thing to manifest it. Manifesting requires purifying the mind and the intellect, which are like layers, but they are preventing the glory of the self from shining forth. So in order to do that, we need to purify the mind, purify the intellect. That is all a part of the inner journey. Now, people ran on the outside for the sake of happiness. And they discovered that it's this kind of happiness is great, but it's evanescent. You run for it, it disappears. The more you fulfill your desires, the more they get inflamed. So ultimately, running for happiness on the outside is like chasing a mirage. And the happiness they were looking for, when they go in the journey within, they discover they have an ocean of happiness inside. They do not need anything from the outside for it. And that is when they become really satisfied. So the inner journey is about finding the ocean of happiness within ourselves.
That's so beautifully explained, Swamiji. The inner journey is to find the ocean of happiness within ourselves. What a wonderful term to use. Swamiji, how important in this journey is the faith in God?
Okay. Spirituality is practiced in different ways around the world. So there are many spiritual traditions where God is not brought into the picture. There is the path of Gyan Yoga, there is the path of Hatha Yoga, etc. But bringing God into the picture is extremely advantageous. The reason being, it's the easiest way of overcoming the biggest impediment in spirituality, which is our own ego. When we have God, we bow down to Him, we submit our ego, we are able to overcome it in the simplest manner. That is why this path of Bhakti Yoga is so easy and also so effective. And there is another point here. With our own efforts, we are limited to our self-abilities. And when we start surrendering before God, we start receiving divine grace. So that divine grace becomes a huge enhancement. It is said, our effort plus the divine grace can make the most difficult target possible. So that is the second advantage of bringing God into the picture. And the third one, now this is very important. People struggle to purify their mind. And when we attach the mind to the all-pure, which is the object of our devotion, in any form, whether it's Ram or Krishna or any form, by fixing our mind on an entity that is completely pure, our mind also gets purified. So, in answer to your question, it is not that we have to practice spirituality with devotion to God, but if we can take a little leap of faith and bring God into the picture, our journey will become blissful, easy, and even more sublime.
Swamiji, this is so important, especially for the young people to hear, because a lot of young people have kind of removed God, like going to temples or mosques or churches is not considered to be a very important thing in their life. And what you're saying is so beautiful, that the ego gets broken and then God into the picture, you tend more humble, more soft, tender, and allow these divinities that are there inside you to come out. That's a beautiful thing you said, Swamiji. Swamiji, many people ask me, if God is so benevolent and kind and also gives us what we need, why does He make us suffer? I think this is a question I'm sure people must be asking you also, that why has God created suffering? So Swamiji, say something about that.
Yes, Tripti ji, this is a question that is often asked. And the reason is that people's perspective is that we should have pleasure and gratification. And what comes in the way is seen as unnecessary and impediment. However, God's perspective is different. His perspective is that we should grow to our full potential. He wants us to manifest the infinite potential that is there in all of us. And growth always entails tolerating pain. If we wish to improve our health, we have to be willing to sacrifice comfort foods. It is austere for our taste buds. We have to be willing to take Karela and Amla, which is painful to our taste buds. But if somebody says, my philosophy is, I only want immediate gratification, how will that person become healthy? In the physical realm itself, we see that in order to become healthier, to become well, we have to be willing to undertake austerities. If it entails tolerating pain, we willingly tolerate pain. Now, as we start aging, we realize that to keep old age at bay, you have to engage in some kind of physical workout that involves stretching, sweating. It is painful, it is uncomfortable, and yet people realize it is for our well-being. So similarly, in the divine scheme of things, as God wants us to reach that ultimate superconsciousness, He sees that we have to be willing to tolerate austerities and hardships. So this pain that comes is not because God doesn't know how to control the world or He doesn't have our best interest in mind. Despite His compassion, He allows this as a part of the grand design, because the pain also works for our benefit. So veritably, this world is the university of hard knocks. Swami Vivekananda put it very well. He said, life is the continual unfoldment of a being under circumstances tending to press it downwards. The nature of life is, it presses us. We combat that, and in that process, we unfold from within. We grow and develop. That is how progress happens, and that is how the Supreme has designed this creation.
Wow, I love that definition that you just said. Combat happens, that's how you, that's really, Swamiji, there are lots of people who, that if you're spiritual, you have to be poor. I'm especially asking this question, Swamiji. Many people who come to these healers, they expect that the work should be done. There are many people who come and say that you're doing spiritual work. Spiritual work should not entail to charge any money. So, what do you have to say about it?
I see. Well, definitely, when we do something with a spiritual perspective, our desire is to give. So that is the intention. I wish to give, I wish to serve, and I wish to help. However, that does not necessarily mean that it should be made free. Because very often what happens is that people take it for granted. They do not realize the value of it. Now the Bhagavad Gita could be distributed freely to everyone. But the problem would be that they would not read it. And when they have paid for it and then purchased their copy, they will realize that they have invested in it and they must utilize their investment by spending their time on it as well. So, definitely the intention in spiritual activities must be one of service. But whether one is taking money or is not taking money is an external thing. People, when they start judging by the externals, they often make mistakes. One person may be making something freely available only for name and fame. Another person may be charging money just because that money will be actually serving the purpose of helping in a better and bigger way. So, spirituality has nothing to do with money or no money and fees or no fees. Spirituality is the inner intention. And
Right.
to be spiritual does not mean that we have to be poor. There was the founder of the Methodist Church. He said, get all you can and give all you can. If you are a business person, you earn, because with that you can engage your wealth in the service of people. Now, if somebody says, okay, I must remain poor, then you cannot have the broadcast of this knowledge with the help of technology. You cannot conduct workshops. You cannot have the welfare programs that could have been possible. That is why, again, it is not presence of money that makes a person material or absence of money that makes a person spiritual. It is our intention which is the most important thing.
I love that answer, Swamiji. Intention. Intent is an important word, and it has so much of power in it, which is exactly what you have said. Swamiji, there are lots, even I have that question for you, that there is life, there is death, and then there is life, there is death. There is a cyclic pattern that we see. So will this end, Swamiji, ever? Will this life and death pattern
Yes.
ever end? Or like a circle, there is no beginning end?
Yes, Tripti ji, in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna has addressed that. Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur dhruvam janma mritasya cha. One who has taken birth will definitely die, and one who dies will take birth again. Now this cycle goes on of birth and death. So this earth planet of ours is called Mrityu Lok, the abode of death, where whoever comes is going to die one day. Your question is, how will it come to an end? We are in this realm of existence because we are as yet under the grip of the material energy Maya. So the material energy is holding us in its grip, and because of that conditioning, we are suffering this repeated birth and death. Now, why are we in this situation? This material energy is like the darkness, and the divine is like the light. So if you turn your back to the light, what you experience is darkness. The reason why we are covered by Maya is that we have turned our consciousness away from God. We are His little parts, but we have chosen to forget Him. We've chosen to just focus our consciousness on the self, on the little I, and that is why we are in this bondage of the material energy. Now, the idea of the spiritual journey is that by following it, we should be able to turn around. And the day we are face to face with our Creator, the day we are surrendered to the Supreme, this world will serve no further purpose for us. We will go to that realm of existence where there is no further birth and death. So again in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, Na tad bhasayate suryo na shashanko na pavakaha yad gatva na nivartante tadhama paramam mama. Arjun, where this sun, this moon, this karm, this kal cannot reach, and having gone where one never returns, that is the divine abode. So that is our ultimate and supreme destiny, and at that point we will have then broken the cycle of life and death.
Well, it seems quite a long journey for all of us, right, Swamiji? It's a
Well, you are right in saying that it seems a long journey, but at the same time, there are no conditions laid by God that you have to complete it in 50 lives. One could as well complete the journey in one life. It all depends on how fast we go. And the second point is that never mind, the goal will come whenever it comes. We must focus on making the journey itself enjoyable. So when you start enjoying the spiritual journey, then who cares about the goal?
That's lovely. Uh, Coming from a person from the background that you have, Swamiji, of management, where everything is about goal setting, it's interesting that you say that the goal really is not important, but the journey is something that we have to enjoy. That itself tells me the kind of journey that you have taken is truly inspirational, Swamiji. Honestly. Going to have some audience questions also. So, would we like to take the audience questions now or a little later?
Sure, most welcome.
Yeah? All right, then. I think we can have the audience questions. Audience can start typing as they're all in just now. And while they're typing, maybe I can ask another question, Swamiji. Swamiji, how important is actually prayer? Because bhakti jaise hai, bhakti is generally, we start our day with prayer. We get up in the morning and we say a little prayer, puja karte hain. So kitna important hai, how important this plays a part in our lives? What would you recommend to all of us?
Okay, Tripti ji, this is such a huge question that I'm just wondering where to begin. Well, prayer actually in bhakti is not necessary because God is sitting inside. He knows all our desires and aspirations before we even express them. So it is not compulsory. However, it is a self-training. It's a training for our own mind in regard to the attitude we need to cultivate towards God. So, our material consciousness says that I am self-reliant, and prayer helps us realize that without grace, we cannot even have the air that we breathe. We are dependent on all of creation for so many of the things that we utilize. And prayer helps us cultivate the attitude that my faith is not in my spiritual practice, my abilities, my wealth, my material contacts. My faith is in the Supreme. Now people say that prayer, is it fulfilled? Does God listen to us? So the question arises that are we praying for the right things? Somebody said we think of God as a cosmic bellboy. In the hotels you have bellboys, press the bell, waiter, and he says, yes sir, what do you want? So similarly, we think God must be a cosmic bellboy. I pray for him and he will immediately manifest it. So if he does not manifest it, we must start thinking, was I praying for the right thing? Maybe I was doing mistakes in my own prayer. An ideal prayer would be one where we don't seek material gains, because these are temporary. We seek divine treasures, those that will stay with us life after life. And the highest prayer is where you ask God for selfless love. In selfless love, your attitude is, I wish to serve and I want nothing in return. So when we have that attitude of selfless love, God actually bestows the highest treasures. Bin mange moti mile, mange mile na bhik. So this is a little explanation on the topic of prayer.
Lovely, Swamiji. It was very nice. There is actually a question here that has come. Why God gives all problems at the same time? God gives problems to those who worship the God daily. Plain Swami, does it happen?
Yes. Now this is like the mother. She loves the child and she wishes the child to grow up and become a wonderful human being. But if the mother keeps on fulfilling every wish of the child, that child will never grow up to face the real world. As the saying goes, if you treat children with kids' gloves, they grow up into babies. If you want them to be great men and women, then we have to, along with love, also practice firmness. So similarly, God wants the best for us. And for that purpose, He allows us to face consequences. He doesn't shield us from consequences. I am reminded of a story. Two neighbors planted saplings side by side on their fences in the hope that they would one day blossom into big trees. And the first neighbor would tend to his tree with great care, watering it, looking after it, putting fertilizer in the ground. The second neighbor would just water it once in 2 days and let it fend for itself. So the first neighbor's tree started shooting forth, and it seemed to be healthier and stronger than the second tree. However, one night, there was a huge storm. And in the morning, when they both came out, the first neighbor discovered that his tree had fallen over, while the second tree, which was shorter in height, was standing strong. So he asked his friend that, I was giving so much of fertilizer to my tree. Why has it fallen, not withstood the storm? Second neighbor said, you made it too easy for this tree. It did not need to shoot its roots deep into the ground. Whereas I allowed my tree to struggle and send its roots deep in search of water. That is what enabled it to withstand the storm. The God doesn't want us to be knocked over by the slightest wave of Maya. That is why He allows us to make choices, to learn from wrong choices, to face consequences, so that through all this, we may be able to realize the infinite glory of the soul within all of us one day.
Lovely, Swamiji. There's another Swamiji. Kumara is asking, Swamiji, how is it possible to tread the path of spirituality when we family with their own other than spirituality? Maybe there are other members of the family who don't believe in that path of spirituality. Then how does one tread on this path?
Yes. That is often a big issue in the world. The saying goes that marriages are made in heaven, but actually, practically, it is often not the case. because otherwise there would be no marital conflicts. So very often in one family, the handful of souls have come with their own past life sanskars, and they all have their different inclinations to the world, to spirituality, and that causes a conflict of interests. It is not only in relation to spirituality, it's in relation, one says, I want to see this TV channel, the other says, I want to see this TV channel. So, spirituality being such an important aspect of life, it is natural that differences of opinion out here create great stress. So, when we are in this situation, we must handle it intelligently. That means we must be very careful in how we behave. Now, if we learn from spirituality that God alone is mine, and if the husband tells his wife, I have understood that God alone is mine, the wife will say, who's the Swamiji who taught you this? You are never going there again. We must, that is why we must appreciate that each has their level of understanding. And if the partner doesn't share the enlightenment that we possess, rather than creating an issue out of it, we should deal with that person with the service orientation. Whenever possible, help. Whenever possible, facilitate. And when the situation demands, tolerate. Now, this tolerance will actually purify us. Because in that opposition, we will struggle. And in the struggle, we will overcome this self-will. My favorite story is of Sant Tukaram. You are speaking from Maharashtra. Sant Tukaram from Maharashtra. His story is very well known. His wife was against his devotion. And Sant Tukaram was once in his puja room, doing his bhakti, Rukmini Vitthal. When his wife burst upon him, there's nothing to eat at home, go and sit in your shop and get some rations. So Sant Tukaram, he went to his shop, he earned for the day, he made some purchases, he was returning. On the way there were some little poor children, he kept on giving to them. And when he returned home, he had only one sugar cane. He gave it to his wife, this is all I have today. She burst into a rage. She took the sugar cane and hit it on his head and broke it into two. So Sant Tukaram was not disturbed. He said, oh, it has got fragmented, no problem. You eat half, I will eat half. And then he went into his puja room. And he said, oh Rukmini Vitthal, you are so kind. You have given me such a wife that I can never be attached to the world again. Now, in the adverse situation, he is seeing an opportunity for spiritual growth. This is all a question of keeping the proper mindset or attitude for ourselves.
Lovely, Swamiji. What a beautiful story. That even somebody else's discomfort, you are taking it in a manner that is so positive for your own personal growth. That's excellent. There's another question, Swamiji. Gagandeep Kumar is asking, I'm always tensed thinking about the future. What should I do to stop it?
Okay. People have not trained their mind to keep it under their control. So somebody is tensed about the past. This happened, why did it happen? It should not have happened. Somebody is tensed about the future. What if such and such thing happens or it doesn't happen? Somebody is in tension about the present. They are not able to control their feelings and emotions in the present. So this is all happening because they have strived for learning and becoming proficient in so many external skills. But they have ignored the internal skill. You were talking about management. Yes, I did do a course in business management, but what I tell people is that manager, whenever I'm invited to a management school, I say, look, manager, manage thyself. The Bible says, physician, heal thyself. I say, manager, manage thyself. You are learning how to manage finances, personnel. Have you learned to manage the mind? And this mind is the biggest problem. So, in fact, if we can learn the art of mind management, we will find that we have achieved freedom from our own emotions. Rather than having our emotions and our thoughts govern us, we will start becoming the governors of our own thoughts.
Absolutely true, Swamiji. We also say that, you need to live in the here and now rather than living in the past or in the future. And that's exactly what you have said, Swamiji. There's another question Namita is asking. What is the best way to serve God, Guru? That's an interesting
What is the best way to
best
serve?
way.
Okay. The
Come,
best
Guru.
way, right. The best way to serve God and Guru is with love. See, God and Guru are in need of nothing. And what is it that we can give to them? It is said of Alexander that he went to Diogenes in Greece before he went to conquer the world. And he said to Diogenes that I wish to serve you. What can I do? So Diogenes said, when I sit in meditation, the flies of your kingdom, they irritate me. They come and sit on me and disturb me. So tell the flies in Greece not to disturb me while I am in meditation. Alexander said, how can I do that? Diogenes said, if you cannot control the flies, then what kind of service are you thinking of? So that is why all that we have belongs to God. And it is a privilege to offer that. So the most important ingredient is love. Love means the consciousness that I have received a gift, my talents, my abilities, my skills, my knowledge, my aptitudes, my possessions, and realizing that it is not mine, it has come from the Supreme. I will try and utilize these for the pleasure of the Lord. So the desire to please, again the intention, to please God and to please Guru is the way to serve them.
So it's all about the intent that really matters. If you have an intent to serve, you have an intent to love, then that really works. There's another question by the same person, Armita. Best way to success in our life?
What is the best way to success in our life? Tripti ji, last year I had written a book which was published. It had also reached the bestseller list. It was 7 Mindsets for Success. What I had explained there was that people feel external resources are the prerequisite for success. However, the biggest prerequisite is our own attitudes, is our own mindsets, the thoughts that we harbor within, which solidify into attitudes and which become habits, which are the mindsets. So, for example, it has been discovered that whether your spiritual journey or your entrepreneurial journey or professional journey, the one ingredient that counts most for success is perseverance. Because in the process of reaching the goal, you fall so many times, you encounter obstacles and difficulties and challenges. Some people lack in the perseverance. The moment a difficulty is encountered, they bolt the other way. But the ones who reach that milestone of success are those who say, no matter how difficult the journey, because it aligns with my sense of purpose, because I find meaning in life, I will continue. As Sri Aurobindo said, you have to be more persistent than the difficulty. There is no other means. So this mindset of cultivating inner grit, inner strength, inner perseverance, this is the key ingredient to success.
Absolutely, Swamiji. I think it all boils down to, having a sense of discipline, because that's really what's most important. You can persevere if you're, and that's what you've been speaking about from the start. There's another very interesting question is asking. When we all are born with a life purpose, why we forget it after birth? Isn't it that we were born to fulfill? That's interesting. We were born with a purpose, but janma hote hi we forget it. So if we were born to fulfill it, then do we forget?
Okay. Yes, since you are the expert on past lives, and this question must be coming up very often on life purpose, so I can see where this question is arising from. It is, we all do have a life purpose with which we are born. Now, this life purpose could be so varied. Some evolved soul takes birth with the life purpose of injecting spirituality in a place. Some soul's life purpose is to enhance literature in that society. Somebody's life purpose is to introduce people to the concept of past life, because otherwise they are just living in the present, in one life's encapsule. And the general life purpose of all of us is to evolve. Where we were in the past life, we must move ahead from there as spiritual beings in our journey of evolution that has been continuing since so many lifetimes. Now, this question that when we are born, we should remember our life purpose. This is simplistic thinking. Okay, 2 plus 2 should be equal to 4. But there are other aspects to it. Now, suppose we could remember that I was the grandfather of my father. How difficult life would become for us. If we could remember incidents from the past very clearly, it would complicate our present experience. That is why God has designed this creation in such a way that we forget. When death happens, that erase, it's such a painful experience. It's like a 2,000 scorpions stinging the body at the same time. So the conscious experiences get erased by the pain. And then again, birth happens. It is an even more painful experience for the soul. And that further erases the experiences. So in the womb, still the child is having some extent of remembrance. But then on birth, a lot of it is forgotten. But not completely. That is why the Nyaya Darshan says that take a look at a little child. Jatasya harsha shoka bhaya sampratipatah. Sometimes without reason that infant becomes happy. Sometimes without reason that infant becomes sad or miserable or fearful. So the Nyaya Darshan says it is still recollecting some episodes from the past. But then as it grows up, so at the age of 5, 6, often you get the feeling of deja vu. Oh, I saw this before. Oh, I saw that before. But then the impressions of this life, they fall so strongly that they erase out the past life memories. That is the grand design. Yes.
That's the design, but the problem, Swamiji, is that every to have it very should not, we should know everything from the time we are born. So that's, I think, one of the issues people have. There's another interesting question. What is bigger, destiny or free will?
Okay. Destiny is called Daiv in Sanskrit. So there is a verse that says, Purva Janma Kritang Karma Tad Daiva Miti Kathyate. What we call as destiny is a consequence of the way we used our free will in the past. That means in past lives, we used our free will to think, to act, to do karmas. And the way we exercised our free will, that is what created our destiny. People feel that destiny is just coming from the heavens. Destiny is something that the astrologer, Panditji, Jyotishiji will tell me, and then I'll wear some stones to counter it. But they're not able to establish the connections that they are the makers of their own destiny. So if it was that we were only tied by our destiny, this logic should have applied to past lives as well, that we were tied by our destiny. Now, if in every life we were tied by our destiny, then when did we do the karmas to create it? So the fact that we had free will in the past means we have got free will now as well. This is, and I'll give you an interesting analogy to understand this. Let us say you are playing a game of cards. You are dealt a hand. Now that hand is fixed. You have to play the bridge with that hand. But how you play is not fixed. Some people, they win with poor hands, and some people lose with good hands. That's why they have bridge tournaments. Similarly, whatever destiny with which we were born, now with our free will, we have to encash it. So Chanakya Pandit says, Purushakar manuvartate daivam. This destiny runs behind your purusharth. Focus on the free will, and destiny will take care of itself. So to come to the question, it is always free will which is most important.
That's kind of a relief, Swamiji, for a lot of people who are listening to you, because everybody thinks only about destiny. This is fated, and saying that free will is what is important. So that's a very, 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 very important people need to hear. Um, there's another very question Snehal has asked me to ask you. Does every soul that takes human form is having a life purpose?
Okay. Yes, Tripti ji, some souls have a very specific life purpose. Like, for example, we find that English was destined to become the language to unite the world, the language of communication around the world. This happened much later. But 200 years before, we had William Shakespeare being born, who enriched that language with his literature. And people admit till today that there has been no other literary figure ever on earth with the skills, with the perception that he had. So he had a very specific life purpose to enrich English language. And of course, even more meaningful is the life purpose of the saints who take humankind in the direction of God. Now we have other life purposes. If God wants the computer to become all-pervasive, He utilizes somebody who becomes His instrument like Bill Gates to fulfill that particular purpose. So these people are very fortunate who are utilized by the divine for such a meaningful task. Not everybody will have such a meaningful life purpose. At the same time, the common purpose of all of us is to evolve. So for example, in my last life, I may have been deficient in selfless love. God may put me in a situation which requires me to develop that aspect in my personality. Or God may need somebody to develop the quality of austerity. It puts that person in the Jain religion. Okay, practice real austerity. He puts somebody somewhere. So that life purpose is of making our personality more complete, developing the ingredients for the ultimate ascension. And as we purify ourselves, we make ourselves available to God. And then He utilizes us as His instrument for His work. So we must keep purifying ourselves. That is the life purpose. If God does decide on something as a part of His work, then we should consider ourselves most fortunate.
Absolutely, Swamiji, you said it so beautifully. You may not have a specific life purpose. You keep evolving, keep learning, keep growing. So one day you can be of service to Him. And then through you, like an instrument of the God, you work. So beautiful, Swami. Another very interesting question, the very common question that people ask, Swamiji, that if I am and if others are a reflection of me, then why don't, if I change, then I must also change. This is one question that people have in mind. But I'm changing behavior, I'm changing my emotions, and if the opposite is like, then the opposite person should also change, but that is not what is happening. So Swami, throw some light on this.
This is, Tripti ji, actually the objection that people have to Shankaracharya's Advait Vedant. You see, if we are all one, then if one person becomes enlightened, everybody should become enlightened. If one, right? But we see it is not happening. So we are all one, that is very correct. However, in that oneness, there is also variety. Like, for example, the parts of a tree are all one with the tree. They are all integral to one entity. And yet, they have their own specific functions. We will eat the fruit, we will not eat the bark. The leaves will create chlorophyll. The flowers have their own purpose. So, in the oneness, there is variety. Now, this is the tree. And when it comes to us, the souls, we are spiritual beings. So, as spiritual beings, we are all one, we are all Satchidanand. We are full of eternality, knowledge, and bliss. But at the same time, we have our individuality. And it is because of that individuality that this whole drama of creation is there. We have our freedom to choose, we have the Lord noting and then giving the results. So this is the concept of unity in diversity and diversity in unity. So Tripti ji, I am really happy with the wonderful inquisitiveness of your viewers and your listeners. If you like, we can make this the last question.
Swamiji, there's one interesting. Everybody should understand. What is the importance of charity, Swamiji? Because मुझे लगता है कि दान जो है ये बहुत बड़ी चीज है. तो दान के बारे में कुछ बताइए. वर्षा जी का ये क्वेश्चन है actually. What is the importance of doing charity?
Okay. As we keep on practicing spirituality, we start removing our defects. Slowly, 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 we come to the root of it all. Just like you first start off playing different matches and then you reach the Wimbledon and then finally the center court of Wimbledon, the biggest opponent in the finals. So the biggest opponent in spirituality is our self-seeking nature. I, me, myself, my wants, my desires, my wishes, it's all that. And charity takes us beyond. Charity is an extension of the heart. It is a consideration of the feelings and the wishes of the others. So charity goes right to the root and cleans us from the self-seeking. Well, let me share with you a very touching and beautiful story. One gentleman went to a psychological counselor and said, I am so unhappy. I have got money, I have got all that money can buy, and still I am miserable. What is the secret of happiness? The psychologist, he said, let's find out the secret of happiness from the janitor. So the jamadar who was cleaning, idhar aana, the sweeper came, he's up. The psychologist said, you seem to be such a happy man. What is the secret of your happiness? The jamadar said, Sahab, 2 years ago my wife died and I was heartbroken. And then 2 months after that, the unthinkable happened. My young son who had been recently married, he passed away in an accident. And I thought the whole world was coming to an end. I didn't know what to do. So I was just walking around in the market thinking of suicide. As I was returning, a little baby kitten started following me. And its meows were very pleasing to my ears. It was offering affection which had become a rare commodity to me. And then when we reached home, I went in and got milk in a saucer and offered it to the kitten. The kitten licked it clean. And then it came to my legs and started rubbing its sides to my leg, purring. And at that time, I broke into a smile. And I realized that I have smiled after 6 months. So I then thought that if helping a little kitten can make such a difference, what if I was to help other people as well? So I tried to find out what my neighbors are struggling with and let me try and help them. And I started making it my hobby. Slowly, slowly, all the miseries became a thing of the past. I discovered happiness in being a person of charity. So it is said that is how happiness is. The more you divide it, the more it multiplies. Similarly, the act of charity sets us onto the journey that life is not about taking, life is about giving. For some people, life is like the ice cream cone. It gives you enjoyment, so enjoy it the maximum before it melts. Similarly, the objective of some is, let me enjoy the max before it's over. And for the others, life is like a candle. The candle burns itself to provide light to the others. So life is an opportunity to serve. Muhammad Ali, boxer, he put it so well, I was astonished. He said, service to others is the rent we pay for our stay on the earth. We are staying on the earth, we have to pay rent, and that rent is service to others. So charity is the most divine act, an offering of love and an offering of the heart.
Wow, beautiful, Swamiji. I think it's so beautifully you have put everything. 1 hour has just passed away, flown away, and such pearls of wisdom given us. I can only say that you actually put it so beautifully that the journey is from I, me, and myself to we and they. And I think that's really how we have to move if we have to ascend, if we have to move out of the circle of time into the circle of love. And every art of yours has been expressed with your fine smile, Swamiji, which has made me smile for an hour actually. I stopped smiling with all your wonderful answers. So thank you so much, Pranam Swamiji. It's been wonderful. Radhe Radhe. And I'm sure we will meet again.
Radhe Radhe, Dr. Tripti Jain, thank you so much for inviting me to your program. It was a pleasure to speak to you and to all your participants.
Thank you, Swamiji.